Today's Music for the Soul podcast is about the topic of grief, and we'd like to offer our listeners a free gift. At the end of the program, go to musicforthesoul.org/drinkdevo for a gift of free devotions about the topic of grief.
Welcome to the Music for the Soul podcast, where we talk honestly about difficult things. This is a place where music, hope, and healing come together. I'm Becky Nordquist.
And I'm Steve Seiler. Today we have with us Todd Nigro. Todd is the founder of a healing ministry for those who are grieving called Ellie's Way. Todd, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me today.
It's great to have you here with us today.
Todd, I guess one of the ways to just get started would be to share how you came to form this ministry and tell us a little bit about Ellie.
Sure. Well, I guess I'll start by just saying it's kind of a difficult story. I don't share it that much anymore, so bear with me. It's not something I share all the time anymore. But basically, we had three beautiful kids, and my wife kind of raising them. And then back in 2012, I came home from lunch one day, and we were homeschooling our kids. And Ellie's little daddy's girl, just always welcoming me, that stage of life, or just so excited to see me when I came home. And so I, said hello to her, saw what she was working on, and, quickly went to do some other things on my short lunch hour. My wife had left, and I heard a noise, and Ellie came running out of a room, and she said she'd been shot, and I didn't know what was going on. And so I picked her up, didn't know what to do. Was I going to call 911, or do I, just take her to the hospital? I really didn't know what was happening, but everything was happening so fast. So anyway, we wound up calling 911, and they came, took her to the hospital, got to the hospital and found out that, we didn't see her again. She basically had passed away. So kind of backtrack what happened. That was just the most tragic day, obviously, that I could ever even describe. But one of my sons was shooting a pellet gun out of the window, and he wasn't allowed to do that, of course, but kids do what kids do sometimes. And he left it loaded next to the window. My other son came in, unbeknownst to him. It was hot, and he should have known better, but he pointed it at Ellie, I guess, and hit her in the chest. So anyway, that's kind of the short version of the story. But man, I'll tell you, it was just something I didn't think we'd survive. I'm not sure, how we did, but in reality, I know how we did. There's just so many things that came from this that we could talk all day about. Probably the biggest thing is I found my faith quickly in the days after that incident. I wasn't a Christian before that. My wife was, and I'd kind of been a seeker and been to church quite a few times with the family over the years prior, but just didn't know how and didn't understand. And I quickly got to the point where I didn't want to be in control after what had happened. So that actually was a wonderful thing for me personally, because it gave me a way to get through this situation. I just leaned into my faith that was, just blooming in that time. And I wanted to find positive ways and things to do through this that I can get through it myself, but also help others. And that's where Ellie's Way came from. So kind of came up with things to do in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep for months after Ellie died. And that's where Ellie's Way came from. Anyway, so that's kind of the short story of where Ellie's Way came from and kind of what happened to me.
Thank you for being willing to share that painful story. I know one of the things I'm sure that you have discovered in years of serving others who are grieving is that there are lots of different stories out there, and all of them hurt. I know I lost my father last year. It's been just about a year, a little bit over a year, and his death was expected because he contracted Alzheimer's disease. So it was a long wait. But even now, I'm finding, I told my wife just last night, that it's hurting more now, a year later, than it did when he died. Because when he died, there was honestly a relief component to it, because he really hadn't been my dad for so long. And now that as memories of who he was when he was healthy start to bubble to the surface, it actually hurts more. I think it's easy to try and keep score about what's worse, but the fact is that death is death, and it hurts. And so for you to take your experience and create a ministry like the one you have that serves that and reaches out to so many people is just such a tremendous blessing. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for sharing your story with our listeners.
Yes, and so, so very, very sorry for your loss. How old was Ellie, may I ask?
Yeah, she was 6 years old.
Oh, we call that in our house the golden years, when they're like
Yeah.
they can kind of put their shoes on
Yeah.
well, thank you so much. And again, I'm so sorry for your loss, but thank you so much for pouring out through your pain. Have you found that to be healing for yourself as you guys began the ministry? Did you find that in beginning that ministry that places in you were healed?
Yeah, I mean, I think I needed something to do in my grief, and I don't think it was running away from it, if that makes sense. But I just really needed to put my energy into something, and for whatever reason, God gave me a lot of energy in that time. I had more, and now even look now. I mean, our kids are gone now out of the house, and I work during the day, and then I don't know where all my time goes. And back then, we were was coaching the kids in baseball, and I was doing all this weight stuff all the time, and I just look back and I don't know where I got all the energy, but so I just needed it all to go somewhere, and it really was rewarding. It still is, and we still have a thriving ministry that I think is a real gift to us, because we get to serve others. We kind of, Ellie, in a way, people have gotten to know her that they didn't know her, but
Yes.
we've kind of been able to share her memory, and she's it's kind of bright light, at that 6-year-old age, and the memories that we can share are so positive, and she's kind of an inspiration to me still, but I think become one to a lot of other people, which is very, I don't know, it's just very rewarding and a nice thing that we've been able to do. So I agree with you too about the keeping score thing. It's something that kind of comes up a lot. So I just wanted to talk about it because I think it's kind of interesting. But I feel like our suffering is if you can get to a point, and it takes a while. So I think somebody fresh in the grief would have a hard time grasping this, but I think it can become a gift, the pain that we've been through, and be used in ways that we'd never dream of. And if you haven't been through that, it's difficult to be able to pour out and have people just realize what you've been through, and then they can relate and understand better. I don't know. So it's kind of, I think, especially as it's been, I think it's 2012, it's been 11 years now, I actually look when the pain comes back, which doesn't come every second of the day, you know what I mean? And I probably even, I would say even now, I think of Ellie perhaps daily, sometimes more than that, sometimes not as much. But when the tears do come for whatever reason, I actually savor those now, because that's making me feel close. I feel close to her. I feel close to those memories, and it doesn't hurt as much, if that makes sense. So.
You said that your favorite Bible verse, you told me, is "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion, and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." And that's really kind of what you just said. Real, as you were sharing, that in our brokenness, sometimes, if we're willing to be vulnerable and open with others with that, we can walk with them, and it's meaningful for people who know that we understand at least some measure of their experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and I also, as I'm listening, I'm thinking he really found purpose through the pain by starting the organization in memory of Ellie. And I'm just wondering, what are some of the ways that you offer support through Ellie's Way? Could you tell us a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the ministry?
Sure. It's kind of several different facets, but probably the biggest one is our Ellie's Way Facebook group that we started. Don't even remember the year now, maybe 2015. It was 3 or 4 years after Ellie died. And it's grown to 16, 17,000 people. And it's really just a peer-to-peer grief support group. What it started with, I spent a lot of time in there in the beginning, as you can imagine, and you're trying to get the group going, everybody engaged, and kind of leading it more than I do now. But what we still do is we post questions about grief, the kind of cycle every 6 months or so. There's some different events that we do. We're actually having a getaway out here in Utah in March. I'm not sure how many people show up, but whoever comes, we're going to really get to know well and enjoy our fellowship time with them, and so I'm looking forward to that. So, but anyway, but the people in the group basically support each other. It's if you think about it, I'm a big believer in counseling for people that want that and need that when they're grieving. But the problem with that is it's available once a week or once, every bi-week or whatever schedule you're on, or if you're going to go to GriefShare or something like that. I think that's also valuable, but it's also not maybe they're available when you want to talk to somebody or when you are looking for some encouragement. And then the other beautiful thing about the group is people can encourage others there. So that's kind of back the full circle of what we were talking about before, where I think, a lot of the kind of the journey seems to be, you get in the group, people are pouring into you, you're sharing your story, you're learning how to cope and how to deal with that. And then it's a beautiful thing to see a year or two later, the kind of leaders emerge and people are now ministering to the newly bereaved, and the cycle just continues.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned some of the questions that you ask, and I have to tell you, it's going to sound strange, but I enjoy being on the Facebook page to see the way that the topic of grief is creatively engaged and the thoughtfulness of the questions and the width and breadth of the questions. It's like some of the questions, I never thought of that before, so it gives you pause and it helps you think things through. Some examples. Have you connected with the faith community? Have you isolated yourself in your grief? How can everyone pray for you this week? Just beautiful, thoughtful questions. And you have this thing called Feelings Friday, where you just ask people, how are you feeling today? Which I think is so great. One of my friends in our prayer group will say, thank God for an ordinary Tuesday. And to just ask people how they're feeling. It doesn't have to be something dramatic. It can just be that in-person connection with somebody. And the other thing that I thought was really neat was the weekly wins, where you ask somebody what their small win was this week. So what's an example, would you say, of a small win for somebody who's grieving?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to change, in the beginning, I think I struggled with sleep and I struggled with just eating properly, in the weeks and months that followed. So I remember that vividly, and just having to almost make it a priority to just eat a power bar every so often so I didn't wither away and lose, so much weight, So that was a big struggle. But I think going, living again, accomplishing the things that you need accomplished, to me, another big, I think, win was being a good dad again. You know what I mean? Obviously you don't want to lose that in your grief, but I think you can kind of get a little bit, I guess, distracted, obviously, you know what I mean? So for me, I think, when I realized, okay, I'm back, I want to focus on my boys and be there for them. And the same thing, with my wife, so just re-engaging with your friends and you're reaching out to your extended family and things like that. You can kind of lose a lot of that in a grief process, I think.
Mm-hmm. And especially with trauma, don't you find? I mean, you almost get frozen in time when you lose someone through a trauma. I found myself really stuck in some ways as far as reaching out into community or looking for support. I just became very isolated in my situation. I love that you have that Facebook community, because for some people who have been traumatized through their loss, it's much easier to reach out virtually than it is to pick up the phone, say. And most of my friends didn't understand a lot of the grieving and trauma that we went through. So you really feel alone, but you have created this great space where you're engaging people to ask maybe hard questions, but then there's that support of having a community, even though it's virtual. Did you find yourself stuck in your own grief at any point where it was hard to reach out? Or
no, I didn't, and I think we're all wired differently. Mm-hmm. But I was a very, I wanted to talk to people, and I wanted to. I mean, I really got a lot out of. There was a gentleman that had a tragedy similar. It wasn't exactly the same, but I think it was an accidental run over of a child or something, and mm-hmm. and it happened a year before or whatever. But he wanted to reach out and meet me and just encourage me, and he was a year or two out, so he was kind of in the same wanting to give back and help others in his grief. But I really was inspired by him, and really, I don't know, I was just open to learning from him. Mm-hmm. And there was multiple people like that, so they were all real role models. And I think also we're kind of the real inspiration behind Ellie's Way as well, if you think about it, because they showed me how to do it. And I don't know, I just wanted to kind of keep, paying that forward and keep it going. And really there was one lady, we were having a bad day. We didn't, Kristen wasn't back when she wasn't working at the time. She was a homeschool mom, but I think I was going back to work, but it was on a weekend and days were just really long. I just remember that, we just didn't really know what to do with ourselves. And we got this knock on the door and there was a package and it was this box and we opened it up and it was a real thoughtful gift package, with the basket and, a blanket with Ellie's name on it and some different treats and just some things that you could tell somebody put some time into thinking about to give to us. And it was signed by, some lady we didn't know. And I was like more impressed by the gift and just the act that somebody would do this, than necessarily even by what was in it. And so I was like, I gotta find who was this? You know what I mean? And I tracked her down and it turned out her brother was murdered, like a year or two before. And she was just trying to find a way, to get through her grief and do something positive. And so she did that for us. And it just meant the world to me that somebody would do that.
That's amazing.
Beautiful.
It's so important to have eyes for people who might be traversing ground you've already walked over. I like that thought of how people saw you in your grief and then you saw in your grief. And then I'm sure it's just continually perpetuating where it's catching on, that ripple effect. It's
really like
great.
Loaves and fishes. I feel like the blessing is being multiplied for what you're doing.
Yeah.
I wanted to pick up on something that you said because you talked about everybody grieving differently. When we were working on the Drink Deep project, we thought we had all the themes covered. We'd had a retreat and we'd written all these songs and we thought, okay, this is it. We've really covered it. And one of the grief therapists we were consulting with listened through to everything. And she goes, well, everything that you have so far is great. But what you're missing is that people grieve differently. And there has to be a song that gives the listeners permission and that encourages them. If you're having a good day and your spouse, maybe, for example, is not, have grace for that. And then maybe they can have grace for you when it's the reverse. So that differently thing is really important. It reminds me, like right now, my wife and I live far away from our grandchildren, and she misses them differently than I do. It's not that I don't miss them, but we've had conversation, and she's tried to help me understand what that feels like from her experience. And her upbringing was very different from mine. And her grandparents were literally ripped away from her. She lived with them for 3 years and then lost them and never got them back again. And so you never know what the individual life circumstances are that imprint somebody in such a way as that they respond to the grief differently and to the loss differently. I also wanted to comment, Becky was talking about the space that you've created with the Facebook page. And the two things that I notice about it is that it's a safe space. That's really important. It's a safe space. And it's a space that you bring in a lot of beauty as well. There are beautiful images, sunsets and sunrises and flowers and all sorts of things that, because we learn and we experience in different ways. Some of us listen, some of us are more moved by words, some are more moved by images, so the variety of the Facebook page, I think, is really well done to help engage the different kind of grieving that people are doing.
Another thing that we've got going, so we got the Facebook page. We also have our website, which it's got it's not that active on the blog, but we've got lots of older blog posts that might be helpful. There's some ebooks and things like that on there, some other resources and writings, that I've put together over the years. So it's definitely a resource that might be helpful to people. Another thing that I've done that I find really rewarding is we put together memorial necklaces. Pretty much the process is complicated enough that I just do it myself. Kristen, my wife, will help me with that when get around to doing those on the weekends. But we've probably put together a couple thousand of those and shipped them out. And our nonprofit, basically, we've kind of learned we just want to give those away to people that need them. It's a super rewarding thing to do. So
when my mom passed away, I remember you sent a care package with a few physical mementos. Like there was a card. And there was a stone, and you had her name there, and I thought that was really, really thoughtful. So do you continue to do that?
We don't do the care packages. We do the necklaces. We just found the other was there's a lot of supplies and a lot of things to do, And our ministry, I'm not a full time. I'm an engineer by day, doing something completely different. So all of the nonprofit ministries work that we do is just, my spare time. So I found it was just a little bit too much to do at the time, to continue that.
Well, I have to say the necklace idea is so great. I have one in memory of our stillborn. And so he's with me when I wear that necklace. It just feels, it's really special because his name is on it. And there's a little pair of booties with angel wings in it. And it's just, I'm sure that it's a blessing to others when they receive those necklaces. So thank you for spending your time and your weekends putting those together, because I'm sure that it is a little bit of a tedious thing, but bless you for doing that, because I'm sure it means a lot to those who get them.
Becky, you've said before that Nicholas's feet, your stillborn son, his feet are on the cover of Before We Said Hello, and that his feet never got to touch the earth, but through your ministry, they're going all around the world. And when I think of that, I think of Ellie.
Yeah.
And that she's not present physically with us, but she is so present. Her spirit is so present in the lives of people, not only of your family and your friends, the people who knew her, but the people who will only know her through this beautiful ministry. It's pretty amazing.
You always pray that your kids will have the ability to bless people and to reach others and really give and share the love of Christ in dark, deep places where his light is needed. And I definitely believe that about little Miss Ellie, is that she's making her mark on the world. And I am certain that she and Nicholas are running around on heaven's playground, laughing and rejoicing with our Lord. And I just, I don't know about you, but I think, I pray that for all of my kids, that they would be a light and have reach in this world for good and for God's glory. And Ellie and Nicholas have achieved that. And that's an answer to my prayers, not in the way that we would like to be able to watch them do it, but it's in a way that couldn't happen if they were here. So it's hard. It's bittersweet, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and, even Ellie, I totally agree with everything you just said. And, I just remember putting her to bed, and she was a Christian. I've got her actually framed her little vacation Bible school, profession of faith, where she checked the box. But she would pray with me at night, and, I wasn't initiating that because at the time that was, I wasn't a Christian, but, I would just watch her and admire her and listen to her and pray with her. And she'd lead me in prayer. And I truly think she was, helped me find my way, she brought me back home, to where I needed to be. So.
Wow. That's incredible.
Well, Todd, we do music around here at Music for the Soul. Did you know that? So I have to ask, is there a song that was especially meaningful to you in your grief that you can tell us about?
The Blessings, Laura Story's Blessings song was, I don't know if it was a big song at the time, but I think it was been out for a little while around that time frame. And I really, just that song really touched me. And I think it kind of demonstrated a lot of things that we're talking about today, that,
Yes.
Blessings can come from difficult times and tragedies. And so that song meant a lot to me. So I listened to, and really music was huge for me. And even now, I don't know what it is. I've got, and like an Ellie's got made like a song list on Spotify or whatever. And it's a lot of songs that, that kind of sad and whatever. And my son and even, Kristen, they'll make fun of me. They'll come in and you're listening, what are you doing? You're listening to all these sad songs, but I just find it's a way to kind of, I don't know, get to the soft side of me that I want to be.
Yes.
Sometimes, and I don't do it all the time, but sometimes that's where I want to be. I want to be in that kind of music.
I can tell you that sometimes I'll just have this feeling I need to cry. I'm carrying something right now and I just need to cry. And I have the go-to music where I will literally turn out the light, lay down on the floor, put on that music, and let the tears come. Sometimes you're just in that mood. I mean, music is so great because if you want to, get in the convertible and go down the highway, there's music for that too, right? I mean, there's a continuum. You can pretty much choose a music to either create a mood or affirm the mood you're in, So that's and there's value in that. Obviously, we believe that. The song that you mentioned when I asked you about Music for the Soul is the song called Gone Ahead that's on the Drink Deep album. We're going to play that here in a little bit. But that actually this is very interesting because I was working with the two singers for the Drink Deep album. One of them was a lady named Nita Whitaker. And her husband, Don, had recently passed. And so I asked her if she would feel up to coming in and doing the female vocals on the record. And it was a phrase that he had used when speaking with somebody who'd gone to heaven. Well, they haven't gone away, they've just gone ahead. That was his way of looking at it. So she joined us in writing a song that would share that. And so I was glad that was meaningful to you. Is there anything, just before we sign off today, is there anything that you would want to leave with people who may be experiencing grief, a fresh grief, some way that we might encourage before we sign off today?
Sure. I think just the song that we're going to finish with is kind of maybe the point that's perfect. For me, I was probably, I don't know if I was afraid of death before Ellie died. I mean, I never went to a funeral until I was to her funeral. So I'm 42 years old going to my first funeral, and it's my daughter's. And a lot of that was just not knowing what to say, it was like a world that I just didn't understand, the loss and death. But since then, I totally believe Ellie's gone ahead, and, if she can do it, I can do it. And there's really nothing to be afraid of, you know what I mean? And what a load lifted off for me. I mean, that's a much different way of living life, not being concerned with that, and kind of knowing that, your eternity is set, that you're okay, So anyways, I just would share that, I totally believe that our loved ones have gone ahead, and we can just look forward to those reunions one day, and then try to just make the most of the life that God's given us, until our time is over.
Amen. That's a good word. Very encouraging. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing with us today and sharing your time and talents and your heart with those who are hurting and grieving. It's just absolutely beautiful and precious.
You're welcome.
Would you share with our listeners where they can find you?
Sure. You can, probably the easiest way is to go to our website at www.elliesway.org. And then from there, you can locate the Facebook group and whatever resources you'd like to find. Probably that's the simplest way.
Okay, and I'm going to spell that for people just so they have it right. Ellie's Way is spelled ELLIESWAY. So that's elliesway.org. And I want to remind people that if they want to go to musicforthesoul.org/drinkdevo, that's DRINKDEVO, you can sign up for some free devotions that have been written on the topic of grief as our gift. So as we head out today, I want to say that we really appreciate your being with us, Todd, and sharing a very difficult story that ultimately is so uplifting. And we're grateful for you and for your ministry.
If you enjoyed the discussion today, please share it with a friend and give us a positive review on iTunes.
And please visit our website, musicforthesoul.org, where you can stream or download every song in our catalog, including Gone Ahead, read our lyrics, our healing music guide, our blog posts, and much more. And we will sign off with the song Gone Ahead today. God bless you all.
I miss you so much, I can still feel your touch. Your laughter still rings in my ears. And though we've said goodbye, you're a part of my life. There's so much of you that's still here. What we had was so strong. It lives on and on and on. just gone.